GLM 5.2 output tokens cost $4.40 per million. Claude Sonnet 5 costs $10, so you're looking at a 56% saving on every long generation you run, and that gap compounds fast at scale. Both models dropped recently, so the pricing and benchmarks I'm pulling here are current, and I'm running GLM 5.2 against Claude Sonnet 5 across 5 real tests: cost, context, speed, multilingual support, and coding. With every number sourced from official docs or independent benchmarks, no vendor spin. Honestly, what I didn't expect is that the cheaper model posts agentic benchmark numbers. Claude Sonnet 5 hasn't even published a score for yet, and whether that changes your pick comes down to one specific thing. This comparison matters if you're picking an API model right now and token costs actually show up in your budget, because a 56% output cost gap is real money every month at volume, and if you work across languages, the wrong pick could mean your model just doesn't support your users at all. Test 1. Pricing and cost efficiency. So imagine you're running a summarization pipeline, thousands of long outputs per day, and you pick the wrong model, your API bill doubles before you even notice, which is why output token costs are where it gets painful fast, and exactly what I'm looking at first. Looking at the published API pricing for both models, GLM 5.2 comes in at $1.40 per million input tokens and $4.40 on output, while Claude Sonnet 5 is $2.00 input and $10.00 output at the introductory rate, which goes to $15 per million output after August 2026. And GLM 5.2 also has a cached input rate of 0.26 per million that Claude hasn't published at all. GLM 5.2 takes this one, and it's not close. I was expecting a modest gap, but 56% cheaper on output tokens is a real difference, not a rounding error, and when Claude Sonnet 5's introductory pricing expires, that gap gets even wider. So GLM 5.2 goes up 1. Claude Sonnet 5 stays at 0. Test 2. Context window. If your model can't hold your full document in memory, it starts forgetting earlier chunks. Outputs get inconsistent, and for long code bases or big research docs, that's a real failure mode that breaks the whole pipeline before you even catch it. What surprised me here is how identical these two are. Both GLM 5.2 and Claude Sonnet AI 5 support 1 million tokens of context and 128,000 max output tokens. And the honest caveat is, there's no published long context retrieval benchmark for Claude Sonnet 5 yet, so we can't verify how it actually performs at the extremes. Take this one with a grain of salt, because claiming 1 million tokens and actually retrieving accurately at that length are two different things. And while GLM 5.2 has shown strong retrieval against Opus 4.8, there's no head-to-head against Claude Sonnet 5 specifically. So for most real workflows where you're nowhere near 1 million tokens, this dimension probably won't be your deciding factor. This one's a tie. I was honestly expecting one of them to have a bigger context window, but they're identical on every published spec. 1 million tokens each and 128K output each, so the score stays at GLM 5.21, Claude Sonnet 5.0, with one tied and neither model gets the point. Test 3. API latency and speed. When you're literally hammering a model with back-to-back requests, slow token generation is painful. Users notice the lag. Pipelines back up. And if your app needs to feel snappy or you're running high throughput batch jobs, output speed per second is the number that actually matters in production. Okay, so this is where it gets a little frustrating. GLM 5.2 has a published speed of 476.2 tokens per second on Together AI, with a time to first token of 5.27 seconds. But Claude Sonnet 5 has no published figure at all. Anthropic just describes it as fast, and I can't call a winner on incomplete data. Another tie, and honestly that surprised me because I was expecting Claude Sonnet 5 to at least have some latency data out there. But GLM 5.2 has the only real number at 476 tokens per second, and without a Sonnet 5 figure, it's not a fair fight. So the score stays, GLM 5.21, Claude Sonnet 5.0, 2 tied. Test 4. Multilingual capability. If your users write in French, Spanish, Japanese, or pretty much anything outside English and Chinese and your model doesn't support it, your product is broken for them. It's a hard blocker. And picking the wrong model here means rebuilding from scratch. Looking at the language support docs for both models, this one's pretty clear-cut. GLM 5.2 supports English and Chinese only, that's it. While Claude Sonnet 5 covers dozens of languages and scores 78.3 on SWE Bench multilingual, a coding benchmark across languages that GLM 5.2 doesn't have a published score on at all. Claude Sonnet 5 takes this one cleanly. I was expecting GLM 5.2 to at least have some multilingual support given it's a newer model, but English and Chinese only is a hard limit. And if you need anything else, it's a non-starter, which ties the overall score. GLM 5.21, Claude Sonnet 5.1, 2 tests still tied. Test 5, Reasoning and Coding. A model that fails on real coding tasks costs you debugging time, broken PRs, and trust from your team. And this is the benchmark that separates genuinely capable models from the ones that just look good on paper. The only direct head-to-head coding benchmark we have is SWE Bench Pro, where Claude Sonnet 5 scores 63.2, GLM 5.2 scores 62.1, a 1.1 point gap that's pretty narrow, and while GLM 5.2 posts strong numbers elsewhere, like 89.5% on GPQA Diamond and 81.0 on Terminal Bench 2.1, Claude Sonnet 5 hasn't published scores on those, so I can't compare them directly. Claude Sonnet 5 takes the coding test, but barely. And honestly, I was expecting a bigger gap from a premium Anthropic model because 63.2 versus 62.1 on SWE Bench Pro is pretty much a coin flip in practice. But the data gives it to Claude Sonnet 5, so the final score is GLM 5.21, Claude Sonnet 5.2, 2 tied. GLM 5.2 wins on price. Hard. Output tokens at $4.40 per million versus $10 is a 56% saving that compounds fast. It hits 476 tokens per second on third-party providers, which makes it great for high-throughput pipelines. And on agentic benchmarks, it posts a 1524 GDP val AALO and 81.0 on Terminal Bench 2.1 that Claude Sonnet 5 hasn't matched publicly. Claude Sonnet 5 wins on multilingual support by a wide margin. GLM 5.2 is English and Chinese only. Claude Sonnet 5 covers dozens of languages and scores 78.3 on SWE Bench multilingual, and it also edges ahead on the only direct coding comparison at 63.2 versus 62.1 on SWE Bench Pro, which is a small gap, but it's the one benchmark where both models have a published number. I went in thinking Claude Sonnet 5 would pull ahead more decisively on coding, but the gap is basically 1.1 points. So here's the decision rule. If you work in English or Chinese, care about cost, and want speed for high-volume work, pick GLM 5.2, because 56% cheaper on output is real money. And if you need multilingual support or want that slight coding edge, Claude Sonnet 5 is worth the premium.